So you've joined a flipped classroom. Your teacher's going to be using the flipped classroom model. Hey, I am John Bergman, one of the pioneers of this model, written some books on the topic, and still teaching. I could even be your teacher someday. So the purpose of this video is to answer two questions. What is flipped learning? And how do I best learn in a flipped class, right? So let's talk about question number one. A long time ago, about 1950 odd, something like that, there was this guy named Benjamin Bloom, and he created this thing called Bloom's taxonomy. Your teachers have all seen this. They probably could speak it verbatim like I can. And it has to do with levels of understanding and learning, right? And so if you look at the bottom here, we've got remembering and then understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, creating. If you kind of go up here, you might notice that the stuff up here at the top, this is the hard stuff. And this is the easy. It's easy to remember. It's harder to create or evaluate information, right? And so if you look at this diagram, if you think of most classrooms, and even when I was teaching back in the dark ages when I first started teaching in 1986, you can do math. I'm old. Is I spent most of my class time down here in the bottom tiers of Bloom's, as we would say. I taught my students from the front of the room. I did that kind of lecture thing, and I said, let's learn about these things. I'm a science teacher. I teach these different things. And then what would happen is that my students, they would have to go home and do the hard stuff at home because we spent so much class time down here at the bottom two levels of Bloom's taxonomy. So in a flipped classroom, well, the picture looks different. Instead of the shape of the pyramid, we change the shape to a diamond. And what you do is, if you think of the area of the diagram as time that your teacher's going to spend in class, the idea of a flipped classroom is that you still have to learn stuff down here, the remembering and understanding stuff. Now in here, this is typically takes the place, or is you still have to learn it, right? But you don't learn it in class. You do this out of class. We call this the pre-work. And it usually takes the form of a short video that the teacher's going to assign or a reading. And then what that leaves is all this stuff up here is, I'm going to call this the hard stuff. And you want to do the hard stuff, if you will, in class where your teacher's there. Because who's the real big expert of whatever you're learning, whether in English class, a math class, whatever, a shop class. The biggest issue that you struggle with is dealing with how to do those hard questions and how to really struggle with that. And so often you as a student have to do that at home, and that's hard. You need the help of your expert teacher. And so it really is kind of like a compact here. You have to do some pre-work, right? That's super important that you do some pre-work when you are doing a flipped classroom model, so that when you come to class, you're prepared to do the hard stuff. I mean, the option is they're going to do the easy stuff in class and send you home to do the hard stuff. And what are you going to do? You're going to go, I don't know, I don't know what to do. You're going to call your friend. That's all right. You're going to go on the internet. You're going to look for answers. But of course, it's best that you learn for yourself. So this is a compact where you have to agree to do this pre-work. You have to take some responsibility for your learning. I mean, your teacher already knows this stuff, right? She doesn't have to relearn it, but you are being experienced or exposed to this material for the first time. So I would encourage you to make a huge effort at doing the pre-work, and that will make you successful in a flipped classroom. So I have a list here of other tips for you. So what am I talking about here? All right, so if you are going to be watching a video, a pre-video that the teacher's going to assign, it's super important, that you watch it, right? You must watch it. But if you want to do maximized learning, look at tip number one. I'm going to sit in a quiet, distraction-free setting. I've silenced my phone. You guys, you live in the most distraction-filled world in the history of the world, and it's so important to take that device and turn it off, honestly. I mean, you can be watching on a device. I would recommend that you do it like on a laptop. It's not so good to watch these on a cell phone. Close your tabs. You turn down social media. It's super important that you write notes, literally with notes. And your teacher, if she's doing this right, is going to have a short video. We're not talking about a 50-minute video. It's going to be like 7 minutes long. So let's say you got a 7-minute video. Do not watch it for 7 minutes. You need to watch it for double, let's say 14 minutes, because what you're going to do is you're going to take careful notes and interact with that video. So let's take up the note-taking tips over here. You're taking careful notes, right? I draw appropriate diagrams and charts with my notes. So like a teacher has a little graph. I'm a science teacher, do something like this. You want to copy those down. I frequently pause. Why is there 14 minutes here? Because what's happening is you're going to pause the video. You're not watching an entertainment video, the latest Marvel flick or something like that. You're watching an instructional video, and it's probably some hard stuff. And so it's some hard stuff. You're going to need to pause it and respond. And actually, if the teacher's making this carefully, oftentimes what she'll do is she'll say, now you should pause the video and write something down. So if she says that in the video, then you should pause the video and write something down to what they say. They're the experts. You got to trust your teacher because they know their stuff, right? If there are questions to answer, so oftentimes what happens is in the course of the video, let's say there's a video, and this is like from 0 minutes and 6 minutes. Now, these aren't going to be super long videos. The video is going to pause at a certain time. There's some different software tools that do this, and then they're going to have a question. And I want you to really respond to that question. Take really the time and effort to do your best job at that question. And oftentimes, if they even do it at the best, they'll actually put a question at the beginning before you even watch the video. There was a research study done by some scientist people, some educational professor people. And what they did is they said that if you ask a pre-video question, so my students all get a pre-video question, and that pre-video question helps them to kind of activate their background knowledge, because you learn things, again, brain thing, how your brain works, is your brain connects things from previous experiences and previous backgrounds. So if we can get you to connect to that, that helps. So that first question is super important to just sort of set your mind, and hopefully it will connect to something you've learned before, and then that gives like a hook for you to learn things with. It's super, super cool, by the way, if you do that. But it takes extra effort. Again, this is a compact between you and your teacher to do the best that you can. One of the weaknesses, the next point here, is the issue of questions, speak of questions. One of the beauties of live lectures is that your students or your teachers, you can ask them a question. You can raise your hand, Mr. Bergman, what about this? You can't do that if you're watching a flip video because your teacher's not sitting there. So what should you do? You should write down your question on your notes, bring it to class. The teacher, if she's doing it right, is going to give you an opportunity to ask those questions, and you need to take some more like ownership and responsibility for your learning, because you're going to say, I didn't quite understand this. At minute 4 in the video, Mrs. Jones, whatever, right? Make sure that you are keeping track, because you need to be held taking that responsibility, right? Write the questions, and you bring your questions to class. So we covered that middle section's note-taking tips. Now the last one is, once you're in class, what do? Well, once you're in class, be someone who participates. That's the key. You need the person who does work. I mean, the magic of a flipped classroom, by the way, is not in these pre-learning activities. There's no expectation, by the way, that you're going to come in and have mastered and learned exactly everything you're supposed to learn. The idea is that you're going to use the class time to understand more deeply and work on the more difficult things. But you get exposed to the information early on. So the key of the flipped classroom is actually what's going to happen in the class. That's where you have time to process and sort of cement the information that you learn. The videos aren't there to completely teach you. They're there to introduce you to the information, and then you're going to go deeper when you're in the class. That's the key. So that's super important, that when you're in class that you're checked in, right? Check in, get your phones away, don't have your phones out. Be prepared to learn, to interact, to answer questions, to do experiments, to write, to whatever it is that your teacher's going to do. I mean, the big idea of flipped learning, of course, is that the hard stuff is done in the class and the easy stuff's done at home. And so the easy stuff being at home, what are you going to do in the class? Well, it depends. I'm a science teacher, we'll do more experiments. An English teacher, you're going to have writing more prompts. In a history class, maybe you'll do debate, or you'll have a Socratic seminar. Or if you're in a world language class and your teachers, you're going to be learning your target language. You're learning Spanish or Mandarin or English or whatever is the language you're trying to attempt to learn. So be participating in class. So hopefully we answered the two questions. Question number 1 was, what is flipped classroom? And number 2 is, how can you best be preparing yourself so that you are going to be successful in a flipped classroom? Hey, Mr. Bergman out.